has gone down to Melbourne by 23 points. The final scores: Melbourne 15-10-100, Carlton 11-11-77. Goal kickers for Carlton: Mitch McGovern kicked 3 in his 100th club game, Elijah Hollands with 2, Ben Ainsworth with 1, Harry Mackay with 1, Jagger Smith with 1, Matt Carroll with 1, Patrick Cripps with 1, and Taylor Byrne on debut kicked a goal with his first kick in league football, making him the 317th player to do that, kicking a goal with his first kick. I'm not angry. It's strange. I mean, have I dissociated myself with the club? I'm not sure, but I don't feel a sense of anger. I don't feel a sense of anger at all. It's a weird feeling. I think when you get into a situation such as today, when we were 44 points up, 43 points up at the start of the second quarter, and you just think, how do you get yourself in that situation and play such great free-flowing football and not actually hold on to that? To me, it's just bewildering. Like, the difference between our first halves and our second halves are just unfathomable. Like, we look like a completely different side. It's wild. For example, our first quarter today, we're a hard-running team. We run for each other. We play on at all costs. And we just moved the ball extremely well. And we created so many opportunities up forward. Taylor Byrne looked like he was creating a bit of havoc. Patrick Cripps looked free. Harry Mackay was taking marks. Mitch McGovern so too. And we went in at quarter time 37 points in front. We had 22 inside 50s in the first quarter to Melbourne's 5. And we were on record pace, really, because the most inside 50s on record is 83. That was North Melbourne in 2018 and Melbourne in 2012. And we just created so many opportunities, and we had 8 marks inside 50, the most we've had in a quarter since round 15, 2021. Patrick Cripps, he had 5 clearances in that first quarter, and we outscored Melbourne by 5 goals straight to nil from stoppages, and we led clearances 9-6. So through all facets of the game, we were on top. And then you come to the second quarter. It was a bit of an arm wrestle to start off with. Cozzy Pickett was starting to get in on the act. And really, I mean, no side had the ascendancy until late in the piece, where 25 minutes into the second term, Harvey Langford kicked Melbourne's first goal. And they'd had the last 11 inside 50s of the match by that point. So the momentum had sort of swung towards Melbourne's way. And they were just knocking on the door, and eventually they were going to get some reward for effort. And then they got that goal at the end of the second quarter. So going at halftime, 34 points the margin. Now, as we know, against Sydney, we led narrowly at halftime, but then kicked out to an 18-point lead, and Sydney wound that back and kicked a mountain of goals, 18 goals to be exact, in the second half of that match. And then we led Brisbane by 29 points, close to halftime in our round 1 encounter, and they reeled that back in and only lost by 4 points. So going into the halftime break, and I was at the MCG today, and the mood around the media box and the mood amongst other Carlton supporters was, okay, great first quarter. We held our own in the second, albeit we only kicked 1 goal 2 to Melbourne's 1 goal 5. But the real test comes in the second half. That's when the pressure is going to be applied. That's when Melbourne's going to come at us and really make us work for our contested possessions and actually work us over and use their pace. And this is something I was really surprised with. I was surprised that the game started in the way it did, with Carlton actually kicking the 6 goals to Melbourne's nothing in the first quarter, because heading into the game, having seen what Melbourne were able to do against St Kilda quite convincingly, I thought Melbourne were going to run us off our feet from the start. You know, the midfield now without Petrarca and Oliver has the ability to actually carve up opposition sides. And, you know, you put Cozzy Pickett in that, you got Harvey Langford, Xavier Lindsay, Caleb Windsor. They're all smart, moving, clean footballers. So I was surprised, and given the milestones of Tom McDonald and Max Gawn, I thought Melbourne would have come out firing, but unfortunately they didn't. But as a Carlton supporter, you've always got that pessimism and, you know, that sort of bleak outlook, thinking, shit, how can this all go wrong? How can we stuff this up and bottle it? You know, and you just think, oh, okay, you can't lose in any other way. You've lost, you know, going back 30 years, you found so many different ways to lose. But on March 29, 2026, we just find another way to lose. So we go into halftime, 34 points in front. I'm liking the game of Harry Dean down back. He's pretty much kept Bradley Fritsch goalless, so he's doing his job. Zach Williams was playing well in that first half. So too Ollie Hollands, Elijah as well. Jagger Smith, he kicked a goal, his first goal in league footy in the first quarter, and we're just on top. Sam Walsh, I remarked to a colleague of mine today that Sam Walsh was running as free as I've seen him for quite some time, and he was just running amok. Cripps, well, he was doing all the hard Crip stuff that he usually does. And, yep, okay, it was a bit of an arm wrestle in that second term, but we still had the lead, 34 points in front. And you think going in with that sort of lead, Michael Voss is going to instill a bit of confidence in what they're doing and also be able to really hold on to this lead, hold on to the ascendancy and the momentum going into the second half and really build on it, because as we know, we haven't played in the Michael Voss era. We have not played a game where 4 quarters have been put together. You know, you go back to 2022, Voss's first season. You know, there were many games where we would play like we did today, where you'd kick 8 or 9 goals in a quarter. You know, the other opposition would come back, would win by 20, 30 points. And then we wouldn't be putting together a 4-quarter performance. Now, 2023, same as that. And if you want to say that's the high watermark of the Michael Voss era, which it is because we made a preliminary final, but even in that season, especially after Camp Kerno in the middle of the year, and then we played the Gold Coast on a Sunday afternoon and won the next 10 games or so in our run to the finals, we never actually put together 4-quarter performances. I think one of the few times we did was that Geelong game on a Friday night in 2024, when after that game we were sitting second in the ladder, because 3-4 weeks after that we played GWS on a Saturday night, kicked 8 goals in the first quarter. I think Kerno injured his ankle, but GWS came back from 5 goals down and beat us by 12 points. So probably the Geelong game of 2024 is the one game that I can think of in my memory that we've actually put together a 4-quarter effort. So coming out at half time, you thought, okay, what's Melbourne going to throw at us? What are they going to do? Now, it was surprising because in the third quarter, Melbourne didn't actually start Cozzy Pickett at the centre bounce. I thought they would have probably moved him in there from the get-go to expose our lack of pace and our lack of foot speed, but they chose not to. He started on the bench. Smart move by Stephen King in the end, because he ended up coming on and he had a massive impact, did Cozzy Pickett. So Ed Langdon, he got the ball rolling and kicked the goal 6 minutes into the third term. Ainsworth responded. Now, I've been impressed with Ben Ainsworth since coming across from the Gold Coast. I think he's a player that we lacked, someone who has a dip, has a bit of a zip, knows where the goals are, he's got a bit of pace on him. Probably doesn't have the tank to play in the midfield, but a mate of mine texted me after the game and said, I'd love to see Ben Ainsworth have a crack in the midfield. jury's out on that. I'm not too sure he has it in his repertoire, but as a high half forward, he's exactly the player that we're being crying out for. And he's been serviceable. Like against Sydney, he kicked a beautiful goal during that third quarter run. He was pretty good against Richmond in round one. And I thought he was pretty impressive today as well. He had 17 disposals, kicked one goal, went at 77%, 297 metres gained. So, look, I think for what we paid to get him, I reckon he's going to be a reasonably valuable acquisition. But then the D's, they got on a bit of a run. Cade Chandler got an early response. Brady Myercheck got on the scoreboard. And Melbourne started to just call them back. They started to get on top in the middle of the ground. 5 clearances to 1 in the first half of that third quarter. And they kicked 3 goals straight from 5 entries. So that was so efficient. Whereas we started to go back to our old habits. Now, I don't know whether this is a thing of old habits die, take ages to die. But once the game, and this was evident when Sam Doherty's voice message to Dan Gorringe was made public 2 weeks ago. But once again, once a team started to challenge us and started to come at us, we go into our shells. We do not look like the team that was running on past their opponents in the first quarter. We don't look like a team who play on it on all costs and take the game on. We look like a team that just goes into their shell, becomes so introverted, so afraid to make a mistake, and it's paralyzing. Like, they just start to play slow, defensive football where they try to hold on to possession, but unfortunately, they turn the ball over in costly areas of the ground, and we cop it. Mitch McGovern, shout out to him, playing his 100th game for the club, kicked 3 goals, and given McGovern has had a lot of stick since coming across from Adelaide, and he's always been, not a huge whipping boy, but he has copped his fair share of criticism over the time. And early on, when he was touted as a forward, didn't quite work out. He was moved down back and pretty much probably, turned his career around at that point for Carlton by playing down back. But I've really been impressed with the way he's applied himself playing as a forward, obviously with Curnow going to Sydney at the end of last year, putting McGovern forward of the ball and adding him as an attacking option. I think it's been probably one of the highlights of the first 3 games of the season, and I hope they persist with that. I don't want to see him go back. I think, you want to really get the games into Harry Dean, O'Farrell when he comes back, Nick Haynes, who shouldn't be too far away. I think, you want to be playing those guys alongside Jacob Wiedering. Lewis Young, the jury's out on him. I know he's probably whipping boy numero uno for a lot of Carlton supporters. He wasn't too bad today. I don't think he did make a few mistakes where he just wasn't composed with his disposal at all, which, I'm not going to single him out because there were a lot of other players who weren't great with their disposals, but I think we're seeing Lewis Young play worse games than he did today. So I'm not going to kick him and say that, any fault in the loss was his fault. So he wasn't that bad. But I'd love to see Wade Dirksen potentially get a game. But I think Nick Haynes probably comes in as next cab off the rank. So, yeah, that third quarter, I think, there was a 5-minute period from about the 22, 23-minute mark where we're kicking to the city end of the ground. It's left half forward, southern stand side. Patrick Cripps grabs a football. Now, Melbourne are coming, but they still haven't mounted their big comeback at this point. Margin's about 20 points. Patrick Cripps got the ball at half forward. He tries to get past one, tries to shrug another tackle. He's caught holding the ball. Now, this is something I've seen from Patrick Cripps time and time again. I acknowledge that he's been a champion of the club for a long time. He's a dual Brownlow medalist, has led our club as well as he possibly can. But I see this regularly, especially at junctures in games where other teams are challenging us, where Patrick Cripps tries to do too much. Rather than dish off a handball or kick it inside 50 at his first opportunity, he tries to shrug a tackle, push off an opponent, and gets caught holding the ball. That's a momentum killer. That completely kills momentum and was just totally something that deflated the team at that point in time. 3 or 4 minutes later, right half back, member side of the ground, he gets run down. 2 holding the balls in a space of 5 minutes, which Melbourne got their tail up, and we're not showing a rearguard action, and we're getting caught like deer in headlights. Now, I would love for Cripps just to, in these situations, back your teammates in a bit more. Have a bit more faith with the players who are around you. Give the ball off when you can first time. Lower your eyes. Kick it inside attacking 50. But I think too many times he's chosen to say, no, I'm going to try to will this team off the canvas and do it all myself. But it's having a detrimental effect in periods of the game. And we left the door open for Melbourne to make a comeback. At 3/4 time, the scores were Carlton 9-8-62, Melbourne 7-8-50, 12 points the margin. And well and truly game on. And to be honest, at that point in time, I thought, geez, I think there's only one team that can win it. And Melbourne looked like the only team that were going to win it. Zach Williams, unfortunate, came off with a rib injury after being tackled. He looked like he was worse for wear. Bailey Fritsch, he'd been well held by Harry Dean up until the 3rd quarter, but he found himself on the end of a number of chains with 4 scoring involvements and kicked 2 goals. And he was starting to become a bit of a headache. Now, what I don't understand is why when we have a opposing forward start to become influential in the game, why doesn't Jacob Wiedering, as the leader of the back six, take it upon himself to say, look, it's my responsibility to help stem the bleeding and go pick up the opposition's most informed forward at that point in time. But Bailey Fritsch, who was starting to get into the game, was left on Harry Dean. I would love a bit more initiative, some on-field leadership. It doesn't necessarily have to come from the coach or the coaching staff. This should be done on the field. A bit of game IQ and be able to identify, hey, we're under the pump here. Bailey Fritsch is getting his tail up. We need to make a personnel change. But it didn't come. And I think it needs to come. Melbourne, they were way on top of the pressure factor in the 3rd quarter. 213 to Carlton's 188. They were all over us. All over us. The handballing game offensively, they recorded 392 metres gained to Carlton's 162 metres. In the 3rd quarter alone, Melbourne led this 157 metres to 21 metres. We just became a stagnant side, which is in stark contrast to how he played the game in the 1st quarter. So what that tells me, it's not ability. It's psychological. It's the team going back into their shell and becoming introverts. Whereas what needs to happen when you get challenged, Carlton need to learn how to fight this challenge, face the challenge, and be able to say, no, we're not going to fold like a pack of cards. We're going to actually face this front on and try to will ourselves over the line. Final term starts. Just as the doctor ordered, Melbourne's debutant Paddy Cross kicks the early goal, and Melbourne are just getting way on top. Hayward kicks it behind. Walsh kicks it behind. we get a bit of a steadier when Elijah Hollands kicks a classy goal. And I was really impressed with the way Hollands played today. I thought he was able to add a bit of poise and class and a bit of added composure when we needed it. When other players were fumbly or making mistakes, Elijah was able to just slow the game down and then dish off and have an effective disposal. And look, there'll be many who will argue we should have just cut him loose at the end of last year. There's no coming back, from what he had done, and we shouldn't have given him a second chance. But I think that he's too good a player to be ending up in the AFL scrap heap at this stage of his life. He's only 24 years of age, and I think he's got the capability to play for another 9 years, 10 years, and be a 150-game footballer for the Carlton Football Club. So he's 19 disposals, 8 of them contested, 6 score involvements, and his 2 goals were impressive for mine. Carroll kicks a goal, and by this point, we're back out to a 20-point margin, and we look like we're actually going to be able to hold off this Melbourne fight back and really secure the 4 points. And at this point in time, something uncharacteristic for Carlton, because we've got a history of folding. And I thought, okay, well, this is good. There's a bit of a regard action here, and they've pulled their finger out and they've been able to adjust and able to weather the storm and now put a couple of punches on the board. But once again, once we got out to that 3.5 goal margin, we went back in our shells. I'll look at the monitor in the commentary box, and we're 20 points up, 11 minutes to play, and we're starting to once again play the chip, slow possession game. I'm thinking to myself, but there's 11 minutes to go. We're not trying to save this. Why? What are we trying to do by going into a mode of self-preservation and trying to save a game? What? If you get another goal and get 26 points up, the game's done. We're finished. But what happens is we turn the ball over in dangerous territory and Harry Sharp kicks a goal. Bailey Fritch then gets on the end of another one and kicks his third. And they've come from half-forward chains. And we're just falling to bits. And to me, it's just staggering that the coaching staff can't actually get a message out to say, hey, look, keep your head and keep playing the way we were playing when we were playing well, by moving the ball quickly, by putting pressure on the opposition as we go into the forward line and creating opportunities. But we stick to the self-preservation mode, and it shoots us in the foot. And it reminded me of late 2022 when he played the Ds at the MCG. It was the second last round of the year. And at that point in time, we needed to beat either Melbourne or Collingwood the week after to make the finals. And I remember in that game, Charlie Curnow taking a big mark towards the punt road end, and he got us about 11 points in front or something like that. There was 2 goals of margin. And at that point in time, Carlton fans thought, here we go. We're home and hosed. We've got the win that's going to be able to score us a place in the finals. And then what we started to do was start to just knock the ball around, pass it around, and try to go into game-saving mode. And on that occasion, it shot us in the foot. We conceded a goal, and then we didn't ice the game properly. And as you recall, Cozzy Pickett kicks the winning goal over his head in the goal square towards the city end. And we get beaten by 5 points, which totally destroys us. Not too sure how we were able to come back the week after and almost beat Collingwood. But in any case, playing that safe, stodgy football cost us. And once again, it cost us today. Chandler goals, kicks his second. Langford kicks his second. And Pickett kicks his second, and then you should have just, like, the look of defeat across the playing group. Even when Melbourne only got a goal in front, it's like, okay, guys, Melbourne have come back and they've gotten in front, but the game's not over yet. But you look around the ground and the playing group just dropped their heads. This is where leadership needed to come in, and Patrick Cripps needed to say, hey, come on, guys, like, the game's not over yet. And Melbourne, they were just too good. They were just way too good. 13 inside 50s in the last quarter. The last 13 inside 50s. So Carlton couldn't even get onto it. They led clearances by 9 in the last quarter. Cozzy Pickett, 10 disposals, 4 scoring involvements and a goal in the final term. Now, I know many of you will say, okay, we were a bit stiff with a few holding the balls, but unfortunately, the Hewitt one, the Frankie Evans one, that's the new interpretation. You get the football. I mean, okay, the Evans one was there. No doubt about that. You get the football, you try to take on the tackler, you duck your head. You know, argument to say he may have been taken slightly high, but a free kick was there. The Hewitt one, a little bit different, but still, you know, with the new interpretation, you need to get rid of the football. You need to dispose of the football in any way, shape or form. But Hewitt decided to hang on to it, and the umpire awarded a free kick against. So, I mean, that could have been argued that it wasn't a free kick. Crucial stage of the game, you know, it added to the momentum changing and shifting towards Melbourne. But I'm not going to say that was a massive reason it cost us the game. Okay, it wasn't ideal, but, you know, there were many other opportunities that we should have taken or should have stopped, and you can't blame the umpires for it. Sam Walsh, 31 disposals, one of the better players for the Blues. Jagger Smith, 25 disposals. He's going to be one of those players that you know what you're going to get week in, week out, and he's a safe pair of hands. Ollie Hollands, 23 disposals, 87% efficiency. I think, once again, one of the knocks, as I've said in the past, has been his disposal efficiency, and you can't knock that today, not at all. I mean, probably the only fault that I could say about Ollie Hollands was it was a ball kick long inside our D50. Looked like it was going to go out of bounds on the full. He decided to try to take the mark. He drops it, goes over the boundary line, creates a boundary throw-in, and from that stoppage, Melbourne were able to kick a goal. So that's probably one of the faults that I had for Ollie today. But other than that, I thought he was pretty good. George Hewitt. Sometimes I wonder, you know, when push came to shove at the end of 2024, when you had George Hewitt and Matt Kennedy essentially fighting it out for the same position, did we let the wrong inside midfielder go? I think Matt Kennedy, for mine, was the one we should have kept. Hindsight's always beautiful, but you look at him at the Bulldogs and he's thriving in that environment. Kennedy, for mine, was always someone who was able to hit the scoreboard, and more so than George Hewitt can. I don't know if you could. I agree you couldn't have kept both. That's one thing that I know, because the game had moved on from the contested style that we would play. So having both Kennedy and Hewitt in the side made us too slow. But did we let the wrong one go? I think so. I think if we had our time again, we probably would have looked at allowing Hewitt to seek a trade rather than trading Matt Kennedy, who was a heart and soul player. And this is for another day, but he was treated appallingly in the way that we made him sit in the subs vest in that final against the Brisbane Lions. Harry Mackay, 16 disposals, 1 goal, 1. He had an almost day, Harry. Like, he gets himself into pretty good positions, but just like to see a little bit more intent from Harry. Sometimes he can go around the field looking a little bit lethargic and disinterested. I just love to see him impose himself on some of the contests, just really crash the packs, bring the ball to ground, because I think the combination of Frankie Evans, Ben Ainsworth, and Taylor Byrne, who I think we need to be playing week in, week out. Taylor Byrne needs to keep playing. If I see him drop for the North Melbourne game, I'm going to be filthy. He needs to be kept in the side. Patrick Cripps, 21 disposals, kicked a nice goal early, but of those 21 disposals, only 50% of those were effective. So for mine, that's a massive tick against Patrick Cripps today. I thought he could have been a lot cleaner with his ball use, and it hurt us. It really did impact us. But they are my thoughts on our 23-point loss against Melbourne. Would love to hear yours. Head to the Heatley Stand In on Instagram and on TikTok. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Moving into a new studio later in the week, so that's going to be very exciting. I just hope that we can respond. I want a response against North Melbourne. I want a response for the second half of this week. And I also want a response for what North Melbourne did to us last year out on the MCG. They pantsed us. They embarrassed us. So if the guys aren't firing on Friday and we drop that, then I think serious conversations need to start regarding the position of Michael Voss. If we lose to North Melbourne, then I seriously believe Michael Voss's position as senior coach of the Carlton Football Club beyond 2026 is untenable. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Head to our Instagram and our TikTok, the Heatley Stand End, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. But until next time, on a somber day, it's go